this idea of shelter as it relates to the inflationary view. What is his thesis? What is his theory that part of inflation will start to ease?
Well, the theory is that because they are removing so many undocumented aliens from the United States, it will reduce demand for housing. And that will bring down the price of housing because more houses will be available to those who are still here. It's based on a study that was done in 2003 about the Mariel boat lift in Miami, which found that there was sort of a one-to-one relationship there between removal and prices going down. A lot of economists say that's a tough thing to scale up nationwide and to say is a rule that will apply in the future. But that's his story, and that's what his belief is in terms of bringing down service price inflation and therefore overall inflation.
Well, shelter is such a tricky thing for the Fed to actually affect. And Fed Chair Jay Powell has talked about this for years, Mike. He said, given the tools that we have, we can only do so much when it comes to shelter prices. And in fact, he's talked about that being more of a policy issue in the past than it is about being part of the Fed's dual mandate.
Well, most analysts of the housing industry say that the problem for housing is that there's not enough supply, and a lot of that has to do with zoning regulations in cities. You can always build out in the suburbs. Now you have to go to the exurbs, and you start to get so far away from people's jobs that they don't want to move out there. They'd like housing in the more central areas, which means you need more density, and that's a big fight always. So that is a policy problem. The other problem is that the Fed controls short rates, and so if you are worried about mortgage rates, they're going to be much more closely tied to long treasuries like the 10-year, and that's going to be priced by the markets in what they think of inflation is going to be. So it's another reason why people are dubious about Miran's view on bringing down inflation through housing.
3 or 4 houses for sale on my block, so
really?
There's definitely some supply that I am seeing. And I remember actually a voice this week on surveillance with Tom
really
and Paul
to hear.
that they talked in the morning about, no, there is plenty of supply out there. So I'm a little confused. I want to move on to another Fed voice. Fed Reserve Vice Chair Philip Jefferson making some comments and cautioning on risks to inflation and job goals. There are Fed voices that matter more than most, and we know Jay Powell is certainly one of them. What about Mr. Jefferson?
Well, he matters in the sense that as vice chair, he's not going to dissent unless he has some horrible disagreement with Jay Powell. And so if that's where he is, that's where Powell is. And you get the same thing when you're talking about what John Williams thinks is the vice chair of the Open Market Committee. So it tells us that basically the Fed is on board with another rate cut because that's what Powell suggested at the last meeting. The question is it October or December? Most people in the markets think it'll be October, and without data, the general feeling seems to be, well, that doesn't give them a reason to change their mind. Now, it could give them a reason to wait and see what happens. But I think what we have to do is wait until we get closer to the end of the month. The meeting's on the 29th of October, and then start judging what Fed people are saying.
Speaking of changing one's mind, and I do want to go back to Steve Miran for a moment. From the conversation that you had this morning with the team on Bloomberg TV and radio, is it fair to say he is kind of data dependent? Did he kind of come across that way?
Well, he's data dependent to the extent that the data back up what he thinks is going to happen. He's saying that he is looking forward, which is basically more being based more on forecasts than on past data. So it's going to be hard to say he's wrong in the short term because whatever he's predicting hasn't happened yet. But his view is that the economy is going to slow, that the labor market is going to slow, and that inflation's also going to come down, and therefore you could cut rates and you should cut rates more quickly because you don't want the economy to weaken too much. But again, that's all based on forecasts as opposed to prior data.